This is a communication school. Good morning, everyone. That's better. Okay, that's better. Now we sound like a good communication school. I invite people to come down. There are seats in the front. This is a new building, as you've probably discovered. We're still working on the acoustics. So if you can hear a word that we're saying, just raise your hand. No, Kurt, I knew you were going to do that. I warned you in advance. But I'm really delighted that you could join us today. My name is Ernest Wilson. I'm the Dean of the Communication School for Communications and Journalism at USC, and we're delighted that you're here with us today. This is really the first event like this in this new building. We designed it to be collaborative and open and participatory, and I'm confident that all of you in the rooms today, both this room and others in the building, will bring life to that hope. So this really is a discussion. It's a discussion about what we think is one of the most important topics in the American political economy and indeed the global political economy, which is the issue of talent. And that's really what brings us together today. This is a very eclectic group. We've got large companies and small companies. We've got universities and we've got corporations and we've got government officials, all coming together around the issue of talent. And so we were quite deliberative and deliberate about bringing a group of people together who have different perspectives, because that is at the guts of what today's discussion is going to be about. And so despite being eclectic and diverse, we are here because we share this common concern, the challenge of harnessing creativity and innovation. To succeed and survive, you've got to innovate. And at Annenberg, we like the saying, innovate or die. Even for a university, innovate or become irrelevant. But you can't innovate without the right kind of talent. And so today's discussion is, what's the right kind of talent necessary to be creative and innovate and implement change and to produce people who are appropriately disruptive, or sometimes, especially some of my colleagues around the room I see already, are inappropriately disruptive, but who make great things happen. So more precisely, we're here to answer three questions. First, what are the dimensions and character of the global talent gap? Is this a big thing, a little thing, an important thing, an unimportant thing? Secondly, what have been your own experiences around the globe in addressing this issue? What's been your experience? And then thirdly, how do we fix it? And toward the end of the day, we'll have some breakout sessions where I hope that will be the leading question. So here at Annenberg, we spent really the last 3 years pursuing these questions, especially the first analytic one, what is the global talent gap? We interviewed and surveyed more than 2,000 people to reach the conclusions that we're going to share with you today. And these are still pretty preliminary, and so that's why we call the black book that you will receive in the other room a working paper, because this is still a work in progress. We believe that today is a tremendous opportunity for us to address the second and third questions among a select group like yourselves. We are confident that today's discussion will build a foundation for more in-depth research as well as actions to close the talent gap. So today we'll help the USC Annenberg School move forward with our partners to address these critical issues. It will help us update our teaching, speaking very selfishly. It'll help us redefine our curriculum. What should we be teaching? I don't know what we should be teaching until I hear from those of you in the room. What kind of research should we be doing? And importantly, how can we be helpful to those of you in the room to address the talent issues that you address every day? So when we started doing this work 3 years ago, Jerry Swirling and Geneva Overholzer and I went all around the country. We interviewed 75 people. And these were CEOs, COOs, people in Silicon Valley, up in Seattle, in New York. And we said, what do you need? Do you need capital? Is it technology that worries you? Is it regulatory reform? They said, no, it's really not capital. I mean, everybody needs more capital. I need more capital. Everybody needs more capital, but there's $1.3 trillion of cash on company books these days. So I said, it's not really money, it's not the technology which is really racing toward us. It's really talent of a certain kind. So let me just mention a couple of things that sort of verify our finding. The Boston Consulting Group did an interview of 1,000 executives, the BCG, and they said, what's the biggest gap you have between what you have and what you need? And they said it's talent, 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 especially people who are sophisticated about the emergence of digital media and digital technologies and how to use them in the workplace. Here's a quotation from Nobel Prize winner Michael Spence and his MIT co-author Eric Brynjolfsson from a recently published essay. They write, "What will be the scarcest and hence most valuable resource of the second machine age," as they call it, the second machine age, an era driven by digital technologies and their associated economic characteristics. It will be neither ordinary labor nor ordinary capital, but people who can create new ideas and innovations. In addition to the tremendous benefits for such labor, there are big costs for not having enough of it. A McKinsey study estimated that when viewed across the entire value chain of American businesses, from ideation to design to manufacturing, distribution, sales, etc., that the absence of the right kind of skills at each stage of that process probably leaves $800 billion to $1 trillion on the table. That's not chopped liver. That's serious money, and that's just 4 sectors of the American economy. The bottom line is we need these competencies. They're universal. They're essential for everybody, everywhere, all the time. And these macroeconomic costs are reproduced at the level of the firm. The slide that you have in front of you basically talks about what are the costs of not having these third space skills to companies and corporations. Number one, of managerial operating efficiencies, but look at the second one, which reads, sluggish response to critical changes in the environment, insufficient innovation. So this is not just communications narrowly defined. Public relations is an important part, strategic communications is an important part, but every step of the value chain will not generate enough value if these kinds of skills, these third space skills and talents are not available. So that is a huge takeaway for the first part of our research. So reviewing the evidence and listening carefully to our colleagues, we saw traditional business and traditional engineering education and thinking as spaces 1 and 2. Engineering, MBA. And MBA is a shorthand for people in the core business function. And so when we talked to 75 people, and we said, what do you really need? They say, well, you know, we really have enough MBAs, with all due respect to the MBAs in the room. And they said, we sort of need more engineers. And I think the former president of the National Academy of Engineering and National Science, so I have to be careful about what I say here. But they said, yeah, we need engineers, but we need something else. And we said, what is that something else that you need? So if MBAs is the first space, engineering is the second, we just call this thing the third space, and that's where that term comes from. So what does that actually mean? If we could go to, so this is the breakout of what we identified as talent, particular kinds of talent. And you see that before you. Now, these have been talked about before. These are not unique to us, but what we tried to do was to bring it together in a syndrome a collectivity, a portfolio of requirements that you needed to have to be successful. So I'm just going to run through these very quickly. These are found in your report, so I won't dwell on it, but I hope over the course of the day you'll be able to refer to these. So we'll start off with, what are we starting off with? Adaptability? Number one, well, actually, the intellectual curiosity was at the base a lot of this, but adaptability was absolutely essential. Do you run away from ambiguity, or do you approach ambiguity as something really cool that you can mold and participate in and guide, or do you back away from it? Second. 360-degree thinking. Some of our colleagues said, well, no, we love engineers, they're problem solvers, they go straight ahead, but we need this. We need 360-degree thinking about the nature of the problem and the solution to the problem. Empathy. Can you put yourself in the shoes of others? This is especially important as the world becomes more globalized. Can you put yourself in an Indian market or a Chinese market or a European market or an emerging market in South Central? Cultural competence, broadly defined, not just internationally, but are you comfortable dealing with engineers who have a sort of culture of their own, traditional business types, a culture of their own, communicators, a culture of their own. So cultural competence, we believe, is really important for that. Intellectual curiosity. Now, we're having a bit of a debate as to whether or not you can really teach intellectual curiosity. And appropriately, in this moment of the talk, someone invariably says, and I think all of us think, are these things we can really teach? Is it possible to teach empathy? Is it possible to teach 360-degree thinking? And the way I suggest it to you is, think of a tennis player. Some people are really, really good tennis players, and they don't need a lot of coaching. Others are terrible at it, need a lot of coaching. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. And so these 5 competencies that we've identified, we strongly believe can be taught, but some will have more underlying predisposition and talent to acquire and sharpen it. Now let me make a quick transition to the second part of our research. The first part started with these 75 very interesting senior level people from all across the country, as well as some interviews in Shanghai, Beijing, Nanjing, and other parts of the world. So we were able to analyze these 75 folks, but the question was, is it broadly applicable? Is this thing for real, or is it an accident of the people who we happen to interview? And it's at this point that I'm happy to say that we were able to partner with Korn Ferry, which is the largest executive search firm in the world, and really work with them to find a way to go into greater depth. And they were willing to partner with us and really open up their database of close to 2,000 people. And we sliced it and diced it in the following way. And you'll see this in a moment in the charts. We constructed the charts that you see on the board. They are based on the notion of agility that was developed by Korn Ferry. And Bill Simon's here today, and I really want to thank him for making this available to us. So there are 4 dimensions is what you see on the chart. Number 1, openness to change, results orientation, people skills, and intellectual and mental adaptability. The shadings of the quadrants of each circle illustrate the level of achievement of that competency. The larger the shaded area, the higher the score, and each profile is different. And you can find them on page 19 and 20 of the working paper. For us, this was the smoking gun moment. This is not something that we constructed. This is what Korn Ferry had been working on for a number of years. And it really was it was either going to be a eureka moment or let's start with another project. Because if we didn't find significant differences, we'd maybe be talking about something else today. So here's what we found. each, if we actually go back to the first one. No, all the way back. Okay, so this is the engineering profile. And again, with all due respect to the database, who knows if this is 100% right or not, but we think it's probably indicating the right direction. And subjectively, this feels like the right thing. Engineers, people orientation, not bad. Mental agility, pretty good. Results oriented, that's not a surprise, I think. I was a little surprised at the minimal change indicator. That was kind of interesting. Then we looked at MBAs, or people in the core business function, as it's defined by Korn Ferry. And this is the portrayal that we see there. Interpret it as you will. And then we said, well, what about people in a communications function? Advertising, marketing, strategic public relations, strategic communications. What do they look like? And I got down on my knees and prayed when Laura Min Jackson, who did the research, I was afraid we'd all be like clumped in the middle or something like that. But when you look at the communicator profile, it ain't half bad. Not only is it not half bad, but it indicates that for the dimensions that we were really looking for those 5 competencies, came out pretty strongly here. It came out pretty strongly. So I think that is, again, our smoking gun in some ways, that indicates that there are complementarities among engineering, business, and communication. And the question for us, I think, over the rest of the day, in part, is how do we bring the best of all of these professions together? And since we're in a communication school, my pitch is that at the center of that is going to be communication, because we tend to work to try to bring collaboration to the work that we do. Quick transition and toward conclusion. Where are the skills going to come from that will fill the pipelines necessary for those of you who are working, who are in this room today and will be going back to work on Monday or Tuesday? What do you do with those skills, and where do you get them from? I'll say a little bit more about this in the afternoon panel on education and the responsibility of universities. But in the working paper, we suggest why the academic field of communication provides a useful and coherent way of framing the talent issues, and has much to offer to develop third space thinking. But again, I'm not making an argument that it's either or. The challenge is to bring all 3 of these together, and we think communication provides a useful way to do that. Let me switch to say a little bit about what we're trying to do at the Annenberg School. If you can read this, you are really a third space seer. But what this is a map, a network map of all of the things that we are already doing at the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. For example, inside the university, we're not only working here at the school, we're partnering with the Viterbi School of Engineering, Business, Medicine, Education. Outside of the school, we are partnering with companies like many of yours and some of yours, those of you who are in the room from some of these companies, and you can see the kind of outreach. And at the heart, I think, of this third space thinking has got to be more collaboration between universities as we design our curricula and our research and our executive training based on conversations that we have with those of you in the room who can tell us what we should be teaching. But that, I think, is going to be the result of conversation. And we started that, as I said, this has been a 2 or 3 year process. These are the initial results. But we really are looking forward to continuing this. That could include a conference like this one next year. But there's some other proposals that we will be making over the course of the day that I hope you will be making over the course of the day about next steps for a group like this one. Let me close by quoting one of our participants who sent me an email yesterday or day before. And it talks a little bit about the vision and ambition of what we're trying to do here. And I want to underscore that when I talk about third space thinking and third space talents, it's not just using a good PowerPoint. It's not just speaking clearly and decisively. It's an alternative way of thinking. It's much more than just a set of skills. It really is an alternative way of thinking. So one of our colleagues wrote the following paragraph. He said, "Dear Ernie," he says, "I like to think about moon missions and what they try to achieve." And so he wrote, "Before this decade is out, the third space will have created the best model ever for communication and collaboration that will be used by public and private multinational companies and organizations. Following that, people who have become proficient in that model, the third space model, will take it around the globe to produce a level of communication and collaboration never before achieved and never before thought possible." Now that's a pretty bold statement. But I think with the third space talent that we have in this room, and the networks and connections that we have, and the trillion-dollar seriousness of the challenge that we're facing, that this is an appropriate ambition to have. So I want to thank you and close by asking you, as you move through the rest of the day, give us some short, medium, and long-term suggestions about how to achieve this great moonshot idea. I'd like you to focus on company-campus collaboration as the launch pad, as the basis, as the foundation for that. And most importantly, I want us to practice what we preach, which is to apply third space thinking to these third space challenges. Thank you very much.